Have you ever felt like someone was watching your every move, without you being able to see it? Have you ever walked alone and felt the chill of an invisible presence, something that shouldn't exist but is there lurking? Bobby Joe Long, Tampa's most depraved serial killer. This name isn't just a story, it's a shadow that crossed quiet streets, penetrating homes and hearts, leaving scars no one could erase. It could have gone on forever, if it weren't for one person. Imagine for a moment, pure and utter fear. The feeling that every glance, every sound, every breath is being watched. In 1984, Tampa Bay was gripped by this silent, invisible yet palpable terror. Women disappeared, bodies were found in fields, on deserted roads, their lives ripped away in details no human should ever witness. And yet, the killer walked free, smiling at neighbors, driving his red car through town as if nothing had happened. What hides behind such a man? How can the banality of a seemingly ordinary life harbor the coldest, most calculating depravity? The FBI knows. The in-depth investigations, the hidden files, the memories of those who survived. Everything reveals a disconcerting truth. Evil needs no masks to exist. It disguises itself, walks among us, and now you are about to experience it up close. He began with what seemed small, harmless. A look, a closeness, a promise of help. But there was a hunger inside, a hunger that could be satisfied with nothing but absolute control over another life. Each crime was meticulously planned, but carried the irrational impulse of someone who mixed pleasure with destruction. And while the city slept, he hunted. Every face, every open door, every moment of vulnerability was an opportunity. Every detail registered in his mind, like a secret recording only he could play. The smell of fear permeated the air. Not just from the victims, but from the streets, from the corners, from the wind itself, which seemed to whisper the horrors about to unfold. The psychological tension was unbearable, an electric current coursing through the entire city. Can you feel it? Every footstep, every moving shadow, every distant bark of a dog, every dimmed headlight, it's the same sensation he cultivated in every woman he encountered. The silent terror that doesn't scream but consumes. And yet, there's something fascinating. Human voyeurism, the attraction to the forbidden, the need to understand the incomprehensible. Behind the monster are stories of trauma, of rejection, of a broken body and mind that chose the darkest path. The psychological blow is there. How could someone so human, so vulnerable, become so terrifyingly inhuman? You realize it, you don't realize it, but you feel it growing within you now. And then a pause. A breath of hope that never fully arrives. A victim survives. A tiny, almost insignificant detail that changes everything. But you still don't know who. You still don't realize the perverse genius and fragile humanity intertwined in this same being. The tension continues, builds, pulsates, ready to explode in the next stories. Bobby Joe Long isn't just a name. It's a gateway to the darkest side of the human mind, a silent warning. Not every danger is visible, not every monster hides behind chains or bars. Some walk free, unseen, and maybe, just maybe, you've crossed paths with one of them today. And just when you think you've got it, you've felt enough. The next layer of horror begins to reveal itself. Because what comes next isn't just crime, isn't just history. It's a journey into the essence of depravity, manipulation, and fear that creeps in without asking permission. And just when you think you've seen enough, there's something still hidden. A secret file, a forgotten recording deep within a police system, something that reveals not only what he did, but what he was thinking while doing it. If you truly want to understand, if you want to feel the weight of this depraved mind, the only way to continue this journey is by staying with me. Subscribe to the channel. Not out of obligation, but so that the next piece of the puzzle can be revealed. So that you can peer behind the bars, hear the silence of the cells, feel the tension of those who survived and still keep secrets. Each story here is an invitation. An invitation to confront what you never wanted to see but need to know. Each entry is more than a click. It's the certainty that these voices will not be erased, that these mysteries will not be forgotten. It's your chance to experience what no one else has had the courage to record. In the upcoming videos, you'll see details no one has ever shared before. Archives that reveal disturbing contradictions. Testimonies that transform each crime into a mirror of what we're capable of feeling, and sometimes fearing within ourselves. So, if you want to continue down this dark path, if you want to discover what really lies between the lines, click subscribe. And get ready. Because what follows isn't just true, it's a revelation that will shake you to your core. And remember, what you see here doesn't end in the video. The terror, the mystery, the pain continue, and you'll want to be there when the next piece of this puzzle is finally unveiled. Bobby Joe Long. A name that echoes on deserted streets, in half-open doors, in the metallic chill of a police station hallway, and yet, as common as the neighbor you pass at the supermarket. They called him Tampa's most depraved serial killer, but he was much more than a label plastered in newspapers. An ordinary man with a neutral smile, a voice that could be pleasant, hands that could hold a cup of coffee, and eyes that, if you looked too quickly, you might not even notice the emptiness they held. And yet, that same emptiness could swallow someone's life in seconds. The terror he inflicted wasn't just physical. It was psychological. An invisible virus that spread through fear, through the streets, through apartments, through alleys, and through the lives of women who never knew if their next step would be safe. Each crime left a trail of uncertainty and distrust. You begin to notice details you'd previously ignored. Every shadow, every noise, every headlight that goes out in the middle of the night. The entire city began to feel the presence of something unnamed, but carrying all the colors of danger. A red streak pulsing in the air, hinting that death might be closer than anyone imagined. But before we talk about the bodies, before we detail the horrors that marked a generation, we need to look at the mind. Because understanding Bobby Joe Long requires more than statistics, more than dates, more than headlines. It requires feeling, for a moment, the transformation from a wounded child into someone capable of such cruelty. And the hidden truth doesn't appear immediately. It seeps in, slowly, like a cold light that enters through a crack in a window at night, illuminating only parts of a dark room, leaving the rest shrouded in shadow. Long was born on October 14, 1953, in Canova, West Virginia. A boy with a gaze that always seemed to observe too much, absorb too much, understand too much. His childhood was marked by accidents and traumas intertwined with the routine of a struggling mother, a woman trying to survive alone, but who dragged with her a world of frustrations and difficult decisions. He learned early on that life could be brutal, that the body could be a prison, and that silence held secrets no one should hear. He suffered, but he also learned to transform that pain into something strange, almost fascinating. The nickname the media gave him, classified ad rapist, carries with it the cold shoulder of the press, but it doesn't tell the full story. It doesn't reveal the silent obsession that lurked behind the red car, the calculated precision, the way he chose his victims, almost as if every detail were part of a personal ritual, a distorted mirror of his own mind. He was capable of charm, manipulation, and subtlety, but he also carried in every gesture of violence that the common mind cannot fully comprehend. A man who could smile at you in a cafe and minutes later, silently, destroy lives in unimaginable ways. And this is where the controversy arises. How could someone who seemed so human, so close, become the epicenter of a fear that paralyzed an entire city? How could someone who grew up amid limitations, trauma, and rejection develop a mindset so obsessed with violence? Every decision, every act, every impulse seemed guided by something greater than himself, a hidden truth that only now, slowly, we are beginning to glimpse. Do you feel the impact of this? The sensation of being so close to something so forbidden that even from your couch, staring at the screen, you feel the heavy breath of terror. You begin to think, what if it were me? What if I were in that woman's shoes? What if the half-open door I see now concealed something I can't imagine? This is the power of Long's psychological voyeurism. Not only for what he did, but for what he could have done, had fate not chosen a single survivor to interrupt his trajectory. He walked freely among the invisible threads of society, an ordinary man and, at the same time, a supernatural presence of fear. Every street he crossed, every door he opened, carried the silent impact of his decisions, a shadow that infiltrated the minds of those who observed him, even without realizing it. And deep down, while the city breathed a sigh of relief with each temporary detention, the hidden truth remained. He was not just a murderer. He was a reflection of human frailties, of unresolved traumas, of choices that shaped the mind in ways no one dares to admit. Bobby Joe Long's story isn't limited to the bodies, the headlines, or the trial. It lives behind the scenes of the human mind, in the forgotten archives, in the silent corridors of the prison, in the seconds before execution, when all that remains is one's own reflection, one's own conscience confronting mortality. And it is in that moment, on this threshold between life and death, that we understand that every detail, every fragment of his story, carries a disturbing revelation about the nature of evil and what we are willing to accept within ourselves. And so the legend builds, layer by layer, leaving false clues, doors ajar, and questions with no easy answers. But we haven't yet reached the point of what truly transformed him, the moment Bobby Joe Long's mind began its depraved path. There are still shadows to traverse, hidden truths to explore, archives to unearth. The cold light of understanding has only just begun to touch the surface, and now you already feel the chill of what's to come. Bobby Joe Long's childhood begins as a gray canvas of distorted normality, a small, cramped home where warmth was scarce and the absence of security insinuated itself in every gesture. Poverty isn't just a lack of money, it's the silent erosion of hope. He grew up among peeling walls, makeshift furniture, and a mother who carried old frustrations like someone carrying stones tied to her chest. His routine felt more like an emotional minefield. Every scream, every slamming door, every prolonged silence was a lesson in resilience. But it was also a seed planted in the mind of a boy who would soon learn to overobserve, to notice everything hidden in the world's small cracks. His early years were marked by accidents no one spoke of later. The neighborhood whispered, as if the very act of pronouncing the danger brought greater risk. He fell from a height that could have been fatal. A gaping wound on his knee never fully healed, leaving not only a physical mark but a silent warning of vulnerability, of fragility, of what can be stolen from life in an instant. Illness confined him to his bed, to his cold room, while the world remained outside, indifferent. And he learned early on that feeling pain could be both a punishment and a teacher. What truly begins to mark that childhood are not just the accidents, but the realization that the world could be unpredictable, cruel, and that every decision, even the most insignificant, could alter the course of everything. A boy's transformation into something different begins with looking at these cracks. He learns to hide, to mask, to analyze every expression, every reaction, every shadow that moves beyond the half-open door. A silent mentality begins to form. Observe to survive, anticipate to dominate. Every pain experienced, every frustration, every suppressed tear begins to create an internal architecture that no one else understands. The house offered no protection, only a context for what would become a silent obsession with control and predictability. Long spent hours alone, observing the world with surgical attention, recording every small injustice, every opportunity for manipulation hidden behind seemingly innocent routines. He developed a deep, disturbing understanding of how people function when they feel too secure. This initial realization, this emotional fissure, would be the first brick in the wall of his future depravity. But childhood isn't just tragedy. There are small moments of normalcy that make everything more dangerous. A kind neighbor offering candy, a friend laughing at something insignificant, a television tuned to a mind-distracting program, all of these entered the equation and created contrast, blurring the perception of right and wrong, fear and comfort. It's this alternation that shapes the psyche, that teaches the mind to keep secrets, to observe, to transform pain into a silent fascination with the forbidden. And then come the first experiences of rejection, the ones no one notices, but which pierce the soul slowly and precisely. A smile that isn't returned, a humiliating comment, a silent rejection in a moment that should be one of acceptance. Each crack widens, each invisible mark becomes a constant reminder that vulnerability is a weakness and that control over the world around us is the only way to survive. Long's mind is shaped by layers of defense and predator, even if no one around him notices. It is during this childhood that the first signs of internal dissonance begin to appear. The child takes pleasure in exerting some control, even if small, even if only imagined. A dead animal found in the backyard, a manipulated insect, a friend deceived in a cruel prank, small acts that go unnoticed, but which teach the mind to experience the sensation of power without immediate consequences. The line between curiosity, pain, and fascination begins to blur. Psychological voyeurism arises silently, like a shadow growing in the corner of the room, always lurking. And while the city of Tampa was still far from knowing the man he would become, within that boy already pulsed the first spark of something that escaped comprehension. The awareness that the world could be bent to the will of those who observed patiently, that every decision could generate an impact, that every half-open door was an opportunity, that every silence had a weight, that every moment of vulnerability could transform into a revelation, an opportunity, a red line. But what truly destroyed him, what pushed his mind beyond any comprehensible morality, had not yet happened. The accidents, the poverty, the traumas, all of this was just the prelude. Something greater, more disturbing was about to emerge, a hidden truth that would seep like cold light into his thinking, shaping every choice, every impulse, every drive for death and control that would come to define Bobby Joe Long. And it is in this moment, on this threshold between the observing child and the man to come, that we begin to perceive the invisible risk, the vulnerability transformed into a weapon, the seed of terror planted with precision. Every detail of his childhood is a key that unlocks half-open doors, but there are still dark corridors to navigate, There are still archives in the backrooms of the mind that need to be explored. There are still decisions that reveal the complexity of a mindset few would dare fully comprehend. Bobby Joe Long's adolescence unfolds like a narrow corridor, illuminated only by a cold light that insists on exposing every imperfection, every scar he still bears from his childhood. The house, once small and suffocating, has now become an emotional labyrinth, where silence weighs more heavily than any scream. His mother, always distant, now seems an intangible presence, carrying a coldness he learns to decode like no one else. The words never spoken, the restrained gestures, every emotional retreat from his family becomes an invisible but pulsating mark on the mind of the teenager who begins to realize that the world offers him no comfort. At school, social rejection manifests itself in its most cruel form. He watches silently as others play, laugh, and connect. Every look he ignores, every snide comment, every exclusion becomes a wound he learns to hide, to bury deep, but which continues to throb, fueling a contained, almost electric rage. Isolation isn't just physical. It's a sensation that penetrates the bones, that shapes thoughts, that teaches the mind to create parallel worlds where he is the sole master of his destiny. Physical scars are compounded by emotional ones. A cut on the arm, a poorly healed wound, anything the world might consider banal becomes, for him, a confirmation of fragility, of vulnerability that he cannot allow others to perceive. And with this, the need for absolute control is born. He begins to observe more closely. Gestures, routines, behavior patterns, small weaknesses that others don't see. Every detail is an opportunity to anticipate, to manipulate, to predict the unpredictable. The seed of the predatory mind is planted, but still dormant, latent, awaiting the right trigger. The adolescent learns to transform pain into a fascination with the forbidden. He finds pleasure in small transgressions, acts that no one notices, a harmless lie, a cruel joke, an intimidating look. It's a silent rehearsal, an internal laboratory of manipulation and power. Each small victory strengthens his perception that morality is a flexible line, a half-open door that can be pushed open if courage and patience are sufficient. The transformation is subtle, almost imperceptible, but the impact is profound. Hatred begins to mix with shame, humiliation, and guilt. He feels anger toward life, toward people, toward his own body, which doesn't fit the mold society imposes. Each rejection is a painful lesson in powerlessness, each cruel comment an instruction on how the world can bend to the force of those who observe, those who wait, those who plan. It is at this point that the small behaviors he exhibits begin to foreshadow something irreversible. The unblinking gaze at others' pain, the silent curiosity about vulnerability, the feeling that nothing and no one should escape his control. Even as a teenager, there are moments when Long's mind seeks understanding, tries to rationalize, but the contradiction is disturbing. He feels empathy in flashes, but this empathy mixes with a fascination for the suffering of others, creating fertile ground for what is to come. He observes, records, learns, and at the same time takes quiet pleasure in understanding human limits. Every decision he makes, every reaction he observes in others, every lie he experiences in his own interactions shapes the architecture of the mind that will become notorious in Tampa. The city still sleeps in ignorance, but Long feels the red line pulsing within him. Every opportunity for transgression, every vulnerability he detects in others, is a step toward that which he himself cannot fully name. There is a hidden truth, a silent revelation that insists on revealing itself in the shadows. The teenager realizes that the world can be an extension of his deepest desires, that transformation is not only possible, but inevitable if he accepts himself as the architect of his own morality. And, like every mind preparing to cross the invisible line, he begins to cultivate an internal routine of observation, experimentation, and foresight. Every human gesture becomes a backdrop, every everyday situation an opportunity for psychological rehearsal, every shadow a clue to how to manipulate, control, and predict. Psychological voyeurism intensifies. He observes without being seen, interprets without being discovered, and gradually learns to distinguish between appearance and essence, between the mask others wear and the truth that insists on remaining hidden. But none of this is yet the culmination. Every emotional pain, every rejection, every small act of cruelty he commits against himself and others is merely a prelude. Something greater, more disturbing, is about to emerge, something that cannot be contained by the rules of childhood or adolescence, something that will transform every shadow into a stage, every half-open door into a gateway to danger, every decision into an irreversible impact. The wound grows, the mind sharpens, and the accumulated tension is about to boil over, pushing the teenager to cross a line from which he will no longer retreat, even though no one, not even he, knows exactly where the next step will take him. Whisper with me for a moment. Think of that moment when the human mind bows before the forbidden, when the cold light reveals details no one else wants to see. Now imagine the weight of that, carrying every choice, every impulse, every shadow that refuses to disappear. Here you are not just a spectator, you are a confidant. And if you accept this role, there is a simple gesture that can be yours. A small ritual that connects us across this abyss we are exploring together. Write a word. Any word that comes to mind when you hear about everything Bobby Joe Long did, or about the way his mind transformed, camouflaging pain into obsession. It could be fear, it could be incomprehensible, it could even be something silent, almost inaudible, like a whisper inside your own head. This gesture isn't just symbolic. It opens a door between you and those who share your fascination with the forbidden. Each comment is a blade of connection, cutting through the veil of isolation we feel when faced with human mystery. And it's not just a play on words. Each letter you type is a testament to your presence, a mark that shows you dared to face the darkness for a few minutes, that you perceived the transformation of the mind, the silent impact of each decision, and the weight of the hidden truth. Behind the scenes, reading your reactions helps us move forward, encourages us to dig deeper, to reveal more layers than anyone would dare tell. It's a silent exchange. You share a fragment of your perception, and we continue to unearth the story that insists on remaining hidden. Imagine for a moment Long's gaze, the moment he calculates, observes, manipulates, and ask yourself, was this curiosity or pleasure? Answer with one word. A minimal gesture that means, I saw, I felt, I participated in this invisible thread that unites us. Some will write something that reveals indignation, others something that brings unexpected empathy. And both gestures carry the same weight. Ask yourself, when someone crosses the line between fear and fascination, between hatred and compassion, what is your reaction? This is the moment to connect. No need for a long explanation or justification. Just a word that shows you're here, that you felt the same tension, that you share the same restlessness. Because no matter how much the narrative progresses, the ritual remains. Your every gesture, every reflection, every outburst feeds the spiral of what we'll reveal next. It's a silent code, an invisible pact between you and the story, a thread that holds us together as we explore the abyss of the human mind. So write. Feel the weight of it. Notice how the choice of a word can open doors between worlds no one else would dare to visit. And as you do so, maintain the feeling that there is something greater yet to come, a recording, a hidden fragment, a truth yet to be revealed. You are already participating in the ritual. Are you ready to discover what lurks just behind the next half-open door? Each comment is a whisper of belonging. Each typed word is more than a reaction. It's a gesture of courage, a silent invitation to continue. And even as fear and doubt mingle, you realize you're not alone. There's an invisible community, connected by the same fascination and the same need to understand. It's here, amid these shadows, that the next fragment of the story begins to breathe, ready to reveal itself, fragment by fragment, as you keep the flame of your release burning. Life sometimes shatters everything in an instant. A second, a flicker of distraction, and everything that seems solid crumbles silently. For Bobby Joe Long, the breaking point wasn't a whisper, but a roar that left invisible marks, scars no one could see, not even him. It happened in slow motion, every detail magnified by pain. The approaching ground, the echoing sound, the confusion mixing fear and rage, pure, brutal, immediate transformation. He was young, but his mind was already shifting, shaping future decisions and shadows, preparing the ground for a hidden truth no one could imagine. Stay with me until the end, because understanding what happened in that moment is essential. It's not just a detail, it's not just a story of an accident. It's the half-open door that reveals how an ordinary human being can begin to lose themselves, how a mindset that seems still intact fragments and creates a silent red line. Every decision they make afterward, every choice that pushes them toward the abyss, is born from there. I'll show you what no one tells you behind the scenes, how pain transforms into impulse, how the psychological impact spreads without warning, but first, you need to feel it, with me breathing every fragment of this experience. The body survived, but the mind? Oh, the mind was no longer his. He returned home, but he was no longer the same man. Small gestures revealed subtle changes. The impatience that had vanished before, the harder look in his eyes, the calm that hid behind constant tension. Every movement, every breath seemed a prelude to something yet to come. It's no exaggeration to say that, in that instant, something inside him completely broke. And here's the tricky part. No one noticed, no one warned, because it seemed like just an incident. But you notice, don't you? The transformation doesn't announce itself, it doesn't ring a bell. It invades silently, leaving marks that only the human mind can bear. And if you've ever felt something similar, that small inner abyss that whispers when life suddenly changes, you understand. It's a sensation that grips you, that makes you question everything. Psychological voyeurism here isn't just about observing. It's about feeling your own pulse in time with another's, understanding the banality of evil and the complexity of regret that hasn't yet arrived. It's about realizing that decisions, even small ones, can trigger a chain of events whose impact resonates far beyond what anyone could imagine. The house seemed the same, the routine unchanged, but each room now carried a new weight. The cold light reflected differently on the furniture, creating shadows that seemed to move with it, shadows no one else would see. Every sound was amplified, every laugh, every door slam, every distant siren, all infiltrated the mind, shaping thoughts that fluctuated dangerously between curiosity, fear, and the desire for control. Do you feel that? That tension? Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to reveal next isn't just about Bobby Joe Long. It's about what every human being carries when a breaking point crosses their existence. The rupture manifested itself in silent impulses, in decisions that seemed banal, but which, observed from the outside, revealed clear signs. Unexpected aggression, long stares, a mentality beginning to fragment. He tried to control himself, but the transformation was already underway. Emotional wounds mixed with physical trauma, creating a dangerous mosaic of thoughts and intentions. The hidden truth is that no one realizes what happens inside a mind until it's too late. And as you absorb every detail, every nuance of that moment, every shadow cast on the wall, imagine the silent escalation that would follow. Imagine the tension building, the inner workings of the human mind revealing themselves layer by layer, without asking permission. The impact of trauma isn't measured in days or weeks. It's measured in future decisions, in small signs that, when combined, pave the way for events no one could have predicted. When he returned home, familiarity was no longer a comfort. It was a silent red line, a constant threat only he could sense. Every gesture, every thought, every impulse carried the weight of something growing inside, invisible to others but devastating in his own world. And that's when you need to be alert, when the psychological voyeurism intensifies, when every question begins to multiply within your own mind. What if it were me? What would I do if my mind changed like that? Stay with me until the end, because the story that unfolds from this moment on isn't just about crime, or about Bobby Joe Long. It's about how pain, isolation, and rupture can create a mindset that defies all comprehension. It's about how a single breaking point opens doors to hidden truths, irreversible decisions, and revelations that remain buried until someone uncovers them. The cold light of the room, the half-open door, the distant echo of laughter, all of this is just the beginning. What he did next, and how each subsequent choice intertwined with that rupture, is what will take us even deeper. The darkness that was beginning to form within Bobby Joe Long didn't announce itself with sirens or headlines. It crept in, silent, almost imperceptible, like a shadow slowly growing in the cracks of the house. He moved among neighbors, colleagues, women on the street, with the appearance of an ordinary, almost banal man. But there were cracks, small inconsistencies on the surface. A smile that took too long to fade. A look that lingered where it shouldn't. Behind the scenes of a mind in transformation, internal decisions no one could see. Every gesture carried weight, every action concealed a hidden truth that, at that moment, no one could imagine. What do you feel when you realize someone close to you is hiding something impenetrable? The press soon noticed something different. They called him the Silent Predator, a nickname that mixed fear and fascination, though no one yet knew the real abyss that lurked behind that everyman mask. The contrast between public life and secret life was stark. A seemingly normal young man during the day, smiling at acquaintances, greeting neighbors, maintaining a routine that inspired confidence. But at night, a silent transformation took place. The shadows in his mind grew, fueled by isolation and the trauma accumulated since childhood. He became a master of duplicity. Each interaction was a preparation for something deeper, more intense, something yet to come. The first victims, if we can call them that, were almost symbolic, experimental. A test of limits, an attempt to understand one's own mentality in action, to gauge the strength of guilt, the impact of fear on the other. Can you feel it? That tension that doesn't dissolve, that psychological voyeurism that leaves you trapped, breathing along, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. And even in these first acts, there were signs that only the attentive eye could notice. A door ajar, a slower step on the sidewalk, a gaze that lingered longer than it should. The world saw normality, the hidden truth hid behind a curtain no one dared lift. Each small transgression was a rehearsal, each small violation, a preparation for something no one could foresee. But there was an awareness, however faint, that the abyss was approaching. And do you feel it? Do you feel the uneasiness that grows when you realize that what seemed trivial, even innocent, was already the beginning of something much greater? What fascinated and terrified at the same time was his ability to navigate these worlds, to maintain apparent control while exploring the limits of what he could do. There was a subtle dance between control and impulse, between mask and truth, between what society saw and what he hid. Behind the scenes of a transformation that would only fully reveal itself years later, but whose first signs were clear to those who cared to see, a growing shadow moving slowly but inexorably. And yet, no one could have guessed the reach of that shadow. The press created narratives, neighbors spun rumors, but his mind continued its silent journey, fragmenting, testing, exploring. Petty crimes, psychological experiments, decisions that seemed innocuous but fueled the red line. Each act carried within it an invisible impact, a preparation for what was to come. Each gesture was a preamble to the gathering tragedy, a cold lens on the true power of a mind transformed by darkness. And you realize even without seeing that it was just a rehearsal. A calculated move, an internal preparation that no one could interrupt. But what would come next, when that shadow began to fall over the real world, would be something no one would forget. Every decision, every impulse, every psychological recession had a hidden purpose, and each subsequent revelation brings us closer to understanding not only the crimes, but the silent impact of a mind that learned to manipulate, exploit, and dominate. The air in Tampa began to grow heavy, charged with an almost physical tension. Every street seemed to hold a secret, every corner a shadow you wouldn't dare cross alone. And there he was, moving between the city's cracks, invisible and yet incredibly present. Bobby Joe Long wasn't just a name, he was a concept, a presence growing in the city's shadows, fueling a sense of red danger no one could ignore. What gripped us wasn't the logic of the crimes, but the quiet intensity of the terror, the psychological impact that infiltrated without warning, like a cold light penetrating a room you thought safe. The first attack that truly shattered the city's normality occurred silently. A victim chosen without apparent criteria, but studied with almost obsessive attention. The fear that followed was not only of the crime itself, but of the contradiction. An ordinary man smiling at his neighbors, yet capable of unimaginable terror. The psychological effect was immediate. The streets became palpably tense. People looked back even without knowing why. Children slept in fear, mothers clutched their children's hands, neighbors exchanged glances filled with suspicion and insecurity. Impunity fueled every move, every new act, and he seemed to anticipate every reaction, every attempt at control the city attempted to exert. The subsequent crimes were bolder, more meticulous, as if the experiment were escalating, growing, testing limits. A pattern began to form, but no one could see the logic. Each attack was a silent demonstration of power. He played with perception, shaped the city's response, manipulated tension like an invisible maestro. There was a hidden truth that only he knew. Every decision, every victim choice, every space explored, was part of an internal narrative, a mental transformation that no one could fully comprehend. And as the media began to name the facts, calling him the Tampa Predator, the city lived a mixture of fear and psychological voyeurism. The news was fragmented, incomplete, and the population, unable to grasp the true extent, felt only the growing pressure of horror. Each report was a blade, slowly slicing away at the collective sense of security, while he continued to move in the shadows, studying, learning, transforming every reaction into fuel for the next attacks. And yet, he was not a purposeless monster. There was logic to his violence, a mentality that operated on a level few would dare imagine. Behind the scenes of a mind that balanced pleasure and strategy, risk and control, pain and anticipation. The sense of impunity was intoxicating, and each violent act not only reinforced his dominance but also left deep scars on the city, on the collective unconscious, on the fear that spread like smoke. The city's reactions began to intensify. Women walked in company, doors locked tighter, eyes trained on the darkness. The collective panic grew, but paradoxically this only increased his sense of control. The line between safety and danger was tenuous, and he exploited every crevice, every vulnerability, as if testing not only his victims but the city's very ability to withstand terror. And yet, no one knew that the next attack was already planned. The city breathed to a rhythm he set, but no one could predict his next move. Every detail, every shadow, every half-open door carried a silent foreshadowing of horror. The city was a chessboard, he was the invisible player, and the escalation of terror only began to reveal the complexity of a mind preparing for its peak. What followed was not just a crime, it was the embodiment of years of transformation, of psychological fractures, of internal decisions no one could see. Each act was a revelation, each victim a mirror of what the human mind is capable of when confronted with unresolved trauma, hidden desires, and the quest for absolute control. And as the shadow grew, the red line became more visible, setting the stage for a next level of terror that no one could anticipate, but that everyone felt, even without understanding. The city, already swaying under the constant shadow of fear, seemed to breathe more cautiously. Every locked door, every suspicious glance on the sidewalks, carried the memory of previous attacks. But among all the horror stories circulating, there was one that didn't fit the narrative of the absolute predator. A story that revealed that not all was lost, that even at the height of horror, a spark of resistance could emerge. Her name was Michelle, but in his own mind she was simply the girl who wouldn't disappear. Her encounter with him began like all the others, a silent trap, planned with almost surgical precision. But there was something different about her. Something he, with all his experience, couldn't have predicted. Her every move carried a meticulous attention, an awareness of the red line that few could sustain. Her courage wasn't just instinct, it was strategy, observation, a keen awareness of every detail, every shadow, every half-open door that could be both a threat and an exit. The initial shock came when she sensed his approach, not with blind panic, but with a cold, almost clinical analysis of her captor. His every gesture revealed fragments of his own mindset, his inner transformation, and she began to mentally note every pattern, every decision he made. Small noises, shifts in posture, tension in his shoulders, all became vital information. In the silence, she learned to read the predator as if deciphering a hidden truth, an invisible logic that guided his every action. While he believed he had complete control, she manipulated time, space, and his perception. A step to the right, a silence maintained, a glance toward the corner of the room, small decisions that, combined, transformed into a possible escape route. Her every move was a silent declaration that life could still triumph over horror, and that the impunity he so cherished could, for an instant, be interrupted. The mental confrontation between them was almost imperceptible, an invisible dance of control and resistance. He, accustomed to setting the pace, felt for the first time the instability of his own presence. Every prolonged second was a decision, every pause a possibility of failure. And she, even scarred by fear, breathed deeply, absorbing every detail, recording every failure, constructing in her mind the route that would lead her back to freedom. When he finally escaped, it wasn't just a physical movement. It was proof that the mind can overcome terror when it finds strength in observation and decision. But the city, still trying to come to terms with the chaos, didn't know he was still at large. The sense of impunity lingered, like a cold light illuminating the uncertainty, and the red line hadn't disappeared. Every street, every alley, every half-open door could once again be the scene of horror. Michelle became a silent reminder, a fissure in the narrative he believed he controlled. The psychological impact of this survival wasn't just hers. It was on the entire city, which began to realize that the logic of fear could be challenged. But even with the momentary victory, a question lingered in the air, like a persistent echo. How could someone so meticulous, so accustomed to terror, still be at large? And yet, there were nuances no one could grasp. Behind-the-scenes details of her mind, internal decisions that escaped the notice of any observer, revelations that would only become apparent in future actions. The red line hadn't disappeared, it had merely hidden, waiting for the right moment to emerge again. The feeling of psychological voyeurism grew, mixed with empathy for the survivor and the silent guilt of those who, even safe, felt vulnerable in the face of the unpredictability of evil. What Michelle brought to light was more than physical survival. It demonstrated that courage can exist even in the abyss, that the human mind, when pushed, finds ways to subvert horror. And as she rebuilt her days, her every step carried the weight of transformation, of the decisions that saved her life, of the revelations that seeped into the city's alleys and houses, reminding everyone that absolute terror is never as absolute as it seems. But still, he was loose, and he could strike again. Every shadow now seemed a silent promise of danger, every movement in the streets brought a question. Was it just routine or the harbinger of something greater? The city breathed in suspense, and we watching felt the same tension. Every detail Michelle left behind, every gesture, every choice, every studied look, would become a piece of a puzzle no one dared complete. And in the silence that followed, in the deceptive calm between attacks, an unsettling feeling emerged. The story was not complete, the hidden truth still lurked in the city's crevices, and the mindset of a rising predator remained intact, watching, learning, waiting. Each decision he made next could redefine the fear, the emotional impact, and force us to look within ourselves, questioning how prepared we are to understand what truly happens when darkness moves without warning. As you observe every detail of this story, you feel the weight of what has yet to be revealed. His mind remains active even in the shadows, and there are fragments, forgotten recordings, archives hidden behind the scenes of the city, that could change everything we think we know. Stay with me until the end. If you're not yet part of this dark path we're walking together, sign up now. Not out of formality, but because every story we uncover depends on you being here. Every click is like opening a half-open door. Every subscription keeps the cold light shining, revealing what others try to hide. There's a recording, forgotten for years, that will reveal a detail no one noticed, a contradiction that could rewrite your thinking about fear, impunity, and survival. I want you to see it. To feel as if you were inside his mind, alongside the survivor, living every decision, every red line he calculated. To sign up is to enter the circle. It's to be part of those who are not content with superficial answers. It's to allow us together to continue peeling back layers of pain, secrets, and revelations. It's to look at the city, at the terror, and at ourselves, knowing that the next fragment, the next hidden truth, is about to emerge. And as you decide, think, who else would have the courage to look so deeply? Who else would be willing to face the void without getting lost? Here, each story ends where fear lurks but continues to pulsate. And the next part will show the recording. The one no one expected. He didn't see the approach. Small signs no one had noticed lined up like pieces on an ancient chessboard. A strand of hair, the dust on the doorstep, the metallic smell that insisted on lingering in the air, until something became inevitable. The investigation progressed silently, almost invisible, as if each step were rehearsed by a mind that knew the risk better than anyone else. He thought he was above everyone else, but the world had eyes he never suspected existed. The cameras, the watchful neighbors, a car parked out of place. Nothing seemed threatening in isolation. But together, these details were the backstage of his downfall. The police didn't need to rush, they just had to wait. Every fiber, every mark, every fragment of memory he'd left scattered along the way became evidence. It was almost poetic. The predator, who moved with the confidence of one who feared no one, fell into his own web of negligence, a giant stumbling over his own steps. And then came the moment. A piercing silence, like cold light piercing an empty cell. He realized too late that the red line was already upon him. The capture wasn't explosive, but devastating in its inevitability. The world didn't need to scream, it just watched as he finally became vulnerable. The eyes of the law stared at him, intent, scrutinizing every micro-expression, every waver of breath. His every decision, every calculation, seemed to collapse under the weight of the approaching hidden truth. When they finally handcuffed him, there was something in his eyes that no one expected. It wasn't fear. It wasn't surprise. It was a disturbing calm, a fragment of his mind that oscillated between confusion and manipulation, as if he were revealing he knew more than anyone could comprehend. And then the first word. Just one sentence, spoken softly, almost a whisper that was lost in the corridors of the police station, but enough to chill the blood of everyone present. Something that would transform the investigation, that would cast a shadow over what everyone believed to be right. He revealed something no one could ignore. A small, almost imperceptible detail, yet impactful. A fragment of information that rewrote the narrative of the hunt, making each surveillance, each piece of evidence, a piece of an even darker puzzle. The hidden truth was beginning to reveal itself, but only in fragments, in layers few would dare to explore to their fullest. The world watched, without even realizing it, as every decision he made became a thread of memory, revealing motivations, strategies, and carefully crafted lies. It was like stepping behind the scenes into the mind of someone who knew the abyss intimately and toyed with it daily. But even now, handcuffed, there was a sense of control that eluded comprehension. As if every word, every gesture, was designed to sow doubt, to instill an unease that would persist long after the cell closed. And this is where you, the viewer, feel a chill run down your spine. It's impossible not to wonder, how far can someone's ability to manipulate go, even when their downfall is inevitable? How far can the hidden truth linger before everything we believed secure crumbles before us? Every detail, every fragment that was ignored or underestimated, carries with it the possibility of a reversal. Meanwhile, every detail of the capture prepares us for something bigger. A twist no one expected. Every fiber of his being, every look, every whispered word still pulses with tension. The predator has been contained, but the enigma he left behind remains alive, waiting to confront us with decisions, regrets, and revelations that defy logic and morality. And when the interrogations began, everyone felt the same. Something was about to explode in the form of a truth no one could have foreseen. A shadow even deeper than the one the crimes left, something that would show that the story we knew was only the surface. But he wouldn't tell everything. Not now. He would only leave clues. He would only allow each fragment to be uncovered, little by little, transforming the investigation into a labyrinth of doubts and revelations. And the next piece, still hidden, waited silently, ready to be found. The courtroom was silent, but there was no peace. Every look, every sigh told a story that went far beyond the words spoken aloud. He sat there, motionless, as if carrying on his shoulders the weight of what the human mind can rarely comprehend. Each confession slipped from his lips like melting ice, revealing layers of hidden truth no one would dare imagine. These weren't just crimes. They were fragments of a mindset shaped by half-open doors, cold light, decisions made behind the scenes of sanity itself. He spoke of the first steps, those that seemed harmless, almost experimental, and which now proved to be tentative steps toward something much larger, deeper. Every detail of the past emerged as if wanting to be discovered, but without ever revealing everything at once. The pain, regret, and guilt, mixed with a calculated coldness, created an almost unbearable tension. And at the back of the room, the audience felt like voyeurs, participating but silently, crossing the red line of peering into a mind that knew the abyss up close. The judge and the lawyers, professionals trained to listen and judge, could not disguise the effect of his words. Each fragment seemed to revolve around an invisible axis, a turning point that changed everyone's perception of what is human. And even with the conviction about to be announced, the true impact was not in the verdict. It was in the layers of revelations that remained, weighing on every conscience present. Execution, or a life sentence, would be merely the physical closure of a story, not the psychological end. He didn't look back. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply watched, with eyes that carried memories of crimes and survivors, of mistakes and successes, of light and shadow. Every pause, every hesitation, every word carried a silent transformation, the sense that the truth would never be fully known. The audience, absorbing each fragment, could feel the impact of this presence. The weight of decisions made years before, of a mind shaped by extreme events, of a reality fragmented between what was and what could have been. And then came the phrase that echoed even after it was spoken, like a streak of ink that never dries. He died, but the marks he left were never buried. There was no relief. There was no closure. Only the feeling that something remains, invisible yet tangible. The shadows of the past linger, pulsing in the forgotten details, in the memories that resist fading, in the minds of those who observe and still try to understand. Meanwhile, amidst the cold prison corridors and the cameras recording every movement, there are files, recordings, and small fragments of confession that have yet to be explored. Stay with me until the end, because there are hidden revelations that will transform everything you believe about him, about his crimes, about fear and justice. Each fragment holds the key to the next mystery. Each word whispered between lines of testimony can change your perception of the entire story. It's not just about observing. It's about allowing yourself to feel the tension, the guilt, the regret, as if you were inside his mind, witnessing the hidden truth that defies all logic. The story lives on between the lines, behind the scenes of the trial, in the minds of the survivors, and even in yours, the silent spectator. Every detail, every clue, every fragment of memory is a door ajar, and the feeling that something is yet to come creates an uneasiness that doesn't easily dissipate. As you digest each word, each fragment of confession, there's an invisible thread connecting past and present, crime and consequence, fear and empathy. And even with the conviction, his mind remains alive in the scars he left, the doubts he planted, the secrets that still resist being uncovered. The trial ends, but the spiral of mystery, pain, and psychological voyeurism continues. Every future revelation will be anchored in this moment. Every decision the viewer makes to look deeper, to feel more intensely, will be shaped by this tension. He's dead, but the impact, the decisions, the shadows, and the hidden truths he left behind still pulse. And it's in this silent pulse that you realize that what seems closed is far from over. The archive isn't complete. There are recordings that haven't been fully deciphered, details that ordinary eyes missed, fragments of revelations that will challenge your every instinct. The truth still lurks between the lines, and each step forward will reveal something you were perhaps never prepared to face. The story doesn't end in the cell, nor in the sentence. It lives in the tension, in the anticipation, in the chill that runs down your spine when you realize that, even without final answers, each fragment we learn changes our perception of what is real and what is possible. And on this threshold between understanding and the unknown, there is a silent invitation. To keep looking, to keep feeling, to keep fragmenting the narrative, to capture every shadow, every detail that the human mind tries to hide from itself, because the truth, after all, is always darker than any prison. If you've made it this far, you feel the weight of everything you've heard, you know how much each detail has affected you. So, leave a comment below. I'm with you until the end. I want to feel like you were there, that you understood every shadow, every silence. If this story touched something deep inside you, give it a silent, like almost a gesture of complicity, not just for the video but for the tension we share, the impact we carry together. Each gesture of yours keeps alive the promise to continue uncovering what few dare to look at, to reveal the behind the scenes that are still hidden. And if you feel like the truth hasn't been fully revealed yet, that there are fragments that escape comprehension, there's a video right here that complements all of this, that goes straight to the recordings and archives no one has told you about. Click stay with me there. Because the story that began here still pulses, still holds secrets, still challenges every idea you have about fear, justice, and hidden truth. Accompanying isn't just watching. It's being there, feeling there, reflecting there. And together we'll discover what truly remains when the marks seem to disappear.